And thank you all for showing up. It's good to see and good to see so many people here. And I think this is going to be a useful session. I hope it's going to be a useful session. But I'm going to go ahead and admit that I think I gave the session the wrong name because this session is technically is titled "How to Leverage Social Media to Be a More Successful Entrepreneur." And really, rather than explaining kind of the how of how entrepreneurs can leverage social media, I probably should have called this session "Why Entrepreneurs Should Be Leveraging Social Media." Yeah, and because the reason is there's going to be tons and tons of different ways to use social media if you're an entrepreneur, and really like you're just going to have to find the one that works best for you. And I know that kind of stinks. It's not like what there's no magical one. There is no magic one, right? It's going to take a lot of trial and error, like everything in entrepreneurship. But here's the thing: if you commit to figuring it out, well, first of all, it's not rocket science, right? Like my 8-year-old understands Instagram, right? Like you can figure it out. But before you ever can do that, you have to appreciate why you should be leveraging social media, and appreciating the why, like that's what's going to convince you to do the work. And if you're like most entrepreneurs, you're probably thinking like, well, I'm way too busy for all the mindless nonsense involved in social media. Um, and by the way, just for context, I was like that for a long time. I mean, I was building one of my kind of first or most successful startups when Twitter just launched, and my co-founder kept saying we should use this Twitter thing. I think it's going to be a big deal. I'm like, yeah, that's stupid. Who's ever going to want to use that? 140 characters? How is that going to be helpful? Like I was just an idiot about this stuff. I didn't fully appreciate the value. So let's talk about the value, and then when we get into question and answer, hopefully maybe I can give you some more kind of logistical pointers. But the belief that social media is a waste of time it's a fundamental misunderstanding of how entrepreneurs should be using social media, right? So when I'm telling you to use social media, I don't mean you should spend hours every day mindlessly browsing TikTok. Like obviously that's going to be a terrible use of your personal time. When I'm encouraging entrepreneurs to use social media, I'm encouraging them to use it as a tool for lead generation, right? Simply put, social media platforms reach more than half the world's population, right? That's over 4 billion people, billion with a B, right? And now, since humans, we have trouble appreciating such large numbers, so let me put that 4 billion number into proper context. I'm going to do it by sharing an old joke that one of my former mentors used to use. He'd always say, "What do you call a billionaire who loses $1 million?" A billionaire, right? And I love this joke because it does a great job of putting a billion of something into perspective by comparing it with a million, right? Like for most people, $1 million is a ton of money. But remember that a billionaire could literally lose $1 million right now and probably not even notice, right? Like that's how much a billion is. So 4 billion, which is the number of people on social media, it is an unimaginably large number of people. More importantly, you literally have the ability to access them and try to sell them your product, right? Thanks to this tiny supercomputer that's in your pocket right now, right? Like how amazing is that? Okay, this is why social media matters for entrepreneurs. It is the most powerful tool for reaching potential customers in all of human history. And so this is what, when I work with my clients, the CEOs I work with, and even the professional athletes and politicians and actors and actors, I work with them and training them on how to use social media effectively. It starts with this: is you have to appreciate, right, that this thing is going to give you more access to more people than anyone in all of human history, and it's sitting in your pocket right now, or maybe on your desk in front of you. But you get the point, right? So why not use it, right? And the reason people don't use it, and as I see, I think I see Felix in our questions here. We are perfectly honest, can't figure out how to use Instagram. And I realize there's some tongue in cheek there, but it's not necessarily the easiest or quickest tool to figure out. Social media, excuse me, social media as a whole, right? Like it's still difficult, and that's what you need to understand next, right? So entrepreneurs who effectively leverage social media, need to understand that like it's not some sort of magical panacea that's going to suddenly turn them and their startups into wild successes overnight, right? Instead, social media is very much a long game. And to play it properly, you have to start by believing it has enormous value that you'll ultimately be able to access and extract value from if you're willing to commit years to the process of doing so, right? And yes, years. Right. For example, just imagine this scenario. What if I told you 5 to 10 years from now, you could be generating dozens, hundreds, maybe even thousands of sales leads a week, depending on the type of business you're doing, using social media. You'd surely think that sounds great, right? Well, the truth is you can absolutely have that. It is entirely possible, but most people give up before they ever get there because the first few years of leveraging social media, it's not going to feel useful. A good comparison to this, by the way, is dieting, right? When you decide to diet, you get motivated to get healthy and maybe go to the gym every day. And that motivation lasts like what, a solid couple of weeks. But when you're not suddenly 50 pounds lighter with washboard abs after a month, the motivation to eat properly and exercise, it starts to fade, right? Those things feel like difficult and tedious sacrifices that aren't paying meaningful dividends. Well, the same thing is going to happen with leveraging social media for your business, right? Most people can get excited enough to try it, but when they don't see the immediate results, they just kind of give up. They say, this isn't worth it. Don't give up, right? Like, in fact, let's go ahead and call that point number 2. Okay, just to review, right? Like my first key point here, as you recall, was social media. It reaches billions of people, which makes it a huge customer acquisition opportunity for entrepreneurs. My second key point here is do not give up, because extracting value from social media is going to take time, right? However, once you do put in that time, right, the payoff is enormous. So you just have to keep believing. You have to commit to the fact that, hey, I'm going to get value out of this if I'm willing to put in that time and the effort, right? And so this brings me to kind of my third and my final reason for why more entrepreneurs should be absolutely obsessed with social media. And it's related to the way social media allows entrepreneurs to leverage a much more efficient entrepreneurial strategy than they've always been taught, right? Specifically, I'm sure the vast majority of you who are building companies right now, or you're building what are probably best described as garage startups, right? Think of garage startups as the traditional Silicon Valley style of companies where you focus on building a product, and once you have your product, then you start selling it. The problem with the garage startup model of entrepreneurship is it is wildly inefficient because it requires building a product before having access to people who can buy it. And so the result is you wind up spending tons of time and money building something without knowing whether anyone wants it. Right? At that point, you're going to quickly learn the hard part of startups was never actually building products. The hard part, as a lot of you probably know, if you are sitting here in this conversation, the hard part about startups is finding the people who want to use them, right? So you're going to spend way more time and effort trying to get customers. And the vast majority of cases, right, the vast majority of users, of entrepreneurs wind up discovering that you built the wrong thing. And that's when all the work you've done winds up going to waste, right? And so we tend to hear about, I see even in the chat, people talking about Apple and HP, that's how they started the garage. Like, yes, there are some startups that work with the garage startup model, right? They successfully build a company, build a great product, and then people want to buy it. But the vast majority, right? You hear about the successful ones. You don't hear about the hundreds of thousands that are not successful, right? It's survivorship bias is what we've got going on here. And so what's happening, right? And it's also worth noting, right, that traditionally that garage startup model was the more effective model, right? And so here's what we have to understand about social media. And actually, thanks for bringing up, HP, Apple, that kind of stuff, that traditional garage startup model, because yeah, 40, 50 years ago, that was the model you had to use because it was the more efficient model. Today, there is a more efficient model of entrepreneurship, right? And I like to describe this more efficient model of entrepreneurship as, I like to call it the bedroom startup, in part because, people with OnlyFans accounts they're actually a great example of it. And so I wrote a popular article about bedroom startups a couple years ago. I'll try to find the link before we get off here. I'll share it with all of you. The short version is that bedroom startups are built around the idea of aggregating large audiences first. And then once you have a large audience, then you can begin introducing products to that large audience. Right? So you build a big old audience. Once you have that audience, you start trying to sell that audience products, right? Now, the beauty of this alternate entrepreneurial model is it's much more efficient than a garage startup, because if your product doesn't sell, no problem, right? You still have the audience, and that audience was the valuable asset, right? So thanks to still having the audience, you just build another product and you see if your audience wants that. Keep rinsing and repeating until you find something your audience actually wants to buy without having to redo the really hard part of entrepreneurship, which is the marketing, getting in front of people, right? This is what social media enables. Right. Again, the article I'll share with you, I'll find it here in a minute. It's going to go into more detail about all this. But the important thing to know here is that the bedroom startup model of entrepreneurship, it's not new. People have actually been building large audiences and monetizing on them for centuries. Literally, you probably don't think about it, but Shakespeare was a content creator creating audiences and monetizing on it. We all think of Shakespeare as some great literary figure, but the truth is he made a bunch of money doing theater and then he invested that into real estate, right? He was an entrepreneur. He built a large audience and he was just selling to them, right? What's new isn't this concept of building audience. What's new is social media. Social media has made building audiences infinitely more accessible than at any point in human history. And so what this means is so long as you are willing to put in the effort, you can reach enormous amounts of potential buyers from your phone, right? Like how freaking incredible is that? Social media is without question the most powerful entrepreneurial tool in human history. And all you need to do to start leveraging it is reach into your pocket. So then my big question is like, what the heck are you waiting for, right? You gotta commit to it. So that's my high level spiel. For all of you who hopefully a lot of you are familiar with my background and what I do. If you're not, I teach entrepreneurship at Duke University. I've been teaching it for about 10 years. Over the past 5 or so years, I've really started focusing on social media, personal brand building on social media, understanding just the immense value that comes from leveraging social media audiences. I teach that to all my students now. I teach a bunch of classes about that. I've got popular accounts on Instagram and TikTok, and of course, Medium here. Recognizing that building audiences is where the opportunity is. So I hope this is helpful to some of you. I want to shut up now and talk to as many. Someone found the link. They put it in the chat for me. Oh, perfect. The garage tarp is officially dead. Yep, that is the link. So go ahead and let's try to deal with some questions here. All right. So first question here was from Beth. She says, "So what do you post on social media to gain audience?" So this is great. So the beauty of social media, right? And I always like to ask this question. I think it's fun, right? Who is the biggest creator in the world right now? In the chat, who's the biggest creator in the world right now? See if anyone can guess. The Rock is a great guess. Yeah, Mr. Beast. Mr. Beast is the biggest creator in the world. Mr. Beast can reach, his videos that reach over 1 billion people. Again, 1 billion people. And where's Mr. Beast located? He's located in Greenville, North Carolina. He's like 90 minutes from my house. Now think about that in the context of history, right? At no point in human history has anyone ever been able to reach 1 billion people from North Carolina? Heck, at no point in human history has really anyone been able to reach 1 billion people, right? And so what's happening is, there's audiences out there for everything. And so to go back to, I promised I was going to answer the question of what do you post to gain audience? Well, the great thing about social media with so many billions of people is there's audiences out there for everything. And so what you want to do and what you want to focus on is creating value for a certain audience that you are interested in capturing, right? So I build audience around entrepreneurship. Right? It's not a multi-billion person audience, but there are millions and millions of people interested in audience, and I create value for them by creating articles, writing about entrepreneurship, teaching about entrepreneurship, those kinds of things. Whatever you're interested in, if it is rock climbing, if it is needle pointing, if it is breakdancing, whatever you're interested in, create content teaching people about that, explain that, helping people understand that better, and you will build audience. The key to building successful social media audience is, here's the word, write this down if you haven't written down, is value. You have to create value for other people. You're going to fail at social media if you're selfish. If you post about yourself and what you're interested in, you're going to create value for other people if you teach them things. So teach people something that you know a lot about. That's how you're going to build audience. What other questions? Golden Johnson, I see, raised a hand. I'm not quite sure how this is working. Golden, there we go. When it comes to building a social enterprise online, what 3 tips can you share for new founders to reap the benefits of what rewards social media offers? So when it comes to building a social enterprise online, what 3 tips can you share for new founders to reap the benefits of what rewards social media has to offer? Three tips. So yeah, I guess I would call this in a weird way, I would call this a good problem to have, right? To reap the benefits, right? By that point, you're assuming you've already built a large audience. And the hard part is the large audience. The hard part, I'd say, it isn't so much the reaping the benefits part. So rather than kind of dig into the three, what I'll do is kind of zero in on one that I wish I'd understood earlier is from day one of building audience on social media, you really want to focus on capturing people, right? Because the goal of building audience on social media isn't, hey, how do I get, 100,000 followers on Medium, right? Ultimately, and here I am on Medium, and I've got 100,000 followers on Medium, but those aren't people I, for lack of a better word, own, right? Medium owns that. Medium could deplatform me tomorrow. I hope they don't. If you're listening, Medium gods, please don't. But they could deplatform me tomorrow, and and that's and that means I lose all that hard work I've done. So what you want to do is you want to start funneling people into something you own, and really the two things you own, it's either going to be a newsletter, an email list, capture their email address, or it's a product that you're selling. Either way, you want to capture people's contact information and regularly be communicating with them through email, right? And so like I have that too. I have entrepreneur office hours here, officehours.com. Drop that in the chat because you all should sign up if you're not signed up already, right? That's my email list. I call that home base, right? Everything I do, my Instagram, my TikTok, my Medium, everything points back to entrepreneur office hours because it's about capturing people there. So and those are your most dedicated followers. Those are the people who you're helping most, who care most about what you're doing. Those are the people you want to capture. You want to build as big of a list as possible. All right, lots of other good questions coming in. All right, so I'm just going to try to grab them. Let's see. See one here that I just got to answer. What can you do about shadow banning? I hear shadow banning all the time from the creators I work with. They don't get a ton of views on something. They're like, I must be shadow banned. I have this just yesterday morning. I have an NBA player, a very prominent NBA player I work with. And he was complaining on text like he must be shadow banned because he just put up a TikTok that didn't get nearly as many views as as a lot of others TikToks get. And I'm like, no, dude, it just wasn't a good piece of content, right? Like if you don't get a lot of views on a piece of content, like to get banned, you have to do a lot of bad stuff. I mean, this isn't a political statement. I think Donald Trump, think of all the things he had to do before he finally got banned, right? Like it's hard to get banned, right? From a platform. And sometimes there's lots of agendas and things going into banning, right? Like it's really hard. If you are not getting eyeballs on your content, it's because you're creating bad content. So the step is admit it to yourself that it's not good content and figure out how to do better next time. All right, what other questions do we have here? Why Mark Erickson said, why does it take so much time to build the audience? Now wondering might be time to build the wrong audience. How do I build an audience that has a purpose aligned to my possible product? So a few questions in here. So why does it take long to build audience? Because what you're doing fundamentally is you are creating, I'm going to drop a kind of a big concept in here. It was parasocial relationships. A parasocial relationship is a concept that comes from psychology, I think the late 1990s. The idea is basically we build relationships with people. A parasocial relationship is a relationship you build with someone you don't actually know. So it's kind of a one-way relationship. A lot of us have a parasocial relationship with, for example, Taylor Swift. You feel like you love her, you would defend her to the death, but you never met her. She has no idea who you are. Right? That's a parasocial relationship. And so what you're trying to do function on social media, Mark, is you're trying to get strangers to care about you, right? Because in order to get strangers to want to extract value from you, want to buy something from you and follow you and believe what you believe, right? They have to care about you. And it takes a long time to build trust, right? Think about your best friends. You didn't become best friends overnight. Well, the same thing is happening on social media, right? You're building trust. And the way you've got to build trust is by consistently providing value over the course of time, right? And someone's not going to encounter you every day, right? They're going to get an Instagram from you today, and then maybe next week, the algorithm's going to show them another one, and next month another one. It might just take 4 years before someone's seen you enough to trust you, right? So that's why it takes long. Now, how do you know if you're building a kind of an audience that's well aligned with your products? Well, this is where you have to really focus on your interests. And the good thing about entrepreneurs is like once you kind of identify your core interest, you want to build audience around a market, not a product. right? So again, I'll just use me as an example because it's easy because I'm here, right? Is I teach a lot about entrepreneurship, right? I'm not selling entrepreneurial products, right? I teach about entrepreneurship. Now, someday down the road, I might sell something related to an entrepreneurial product. I don't know what that is yet because I don't know what my users want. Because at the end of the day, by the way, entrepreneurship isn't about selling to make a lot of money. Entrepreneurship is about creating value for people. So again, the beauty of this model of building audience first is you get to meet your audience, find out what they actually need, and then create that value for them. So that's the other thing I love about this particular model. All right. So let's answer some more questions here. What else do we got? Sarah Legatchett, I don't know if I said that right at all. How do you leverage multiple platforms to build a following? Is there a strategy to add specific value on each platform that feeds into the other platforms? Oh, this is a great question. There are, my first piece of advice is whatever you do not try to be on every platform in the beginning. Like there's just not enough hours in the day. And, it takes a while to, again, figure out the process for doing it. So pick one platform, maybe two, start building audience on there. And slowly over time, you can expand, right? So it's an efficiency play. You got to learn the processes. Now, each platform kind of has different types of audiences and different types of value that it creates, right? Medium is much more long form pieces, right? You're going to get people, more thought pieces. People are you're going to reach less people, but they're going to be more engaged with what you do. LinkedIn is better for business audiences. I saw someone post in the chat here, this wouldn't work as well for B2B stuff. Well, that's not true. It's just about using the right platform, right? LinkedIn is a much better place to build an audience around B2B things. And by the way, in case you didn't notice it, LinkedIn has started really prioritizing video. And what I mean by that is there's now a scrollable video feed, just like Reels and Instagram and just like TikTok, where you click it and you just scroll up. And what's going to happen is you're not only going to see people you're going to start getting videos from random people you don't know that the algorithm is serving up to you. So there is a huge opportunity right now to be posting videos on LinkedIn. That's going to give you great discoverability, and that's a great B2B market. Whereas TikTok is much more kind of behind the scenes personality content. So with my CEOs that I work with, like if it's more like, hey, you want to show personality, TikTok is a great place for that. Whereas Instagram is more aspirational content and educational content, right? So each platform is just going to use different values. You've got to figure out where do you want to start and what makes the most sense for you. All right, some other questions here. This is probably a silly question. How does one mix TikTok with Medium if you can only post videos and not text? Well, the truth is you wind up having to create multiple different types of content on multiple platforms, right? So the big joke of my life right now is I'm a 41-year-old man and I spend about 5 to 6 hours every day creating, TikToks and Instagram Reels. It is wild. But that's where the opportunity is. And so, so I create those. I also write articles constantly. That's just, it's, I always like to say long form writing, even though the youngins don't care as much about it. A lot of people with who are better customers, people who are older and have money to buy, tend to like to read articles. So that's important. The other thing is, for me, writing is a way of thinking. And so I love creating content on Medium. Medium is amazing because it's how I think. So it's not about I never use AI to like come in and write an article for me because I want to do the thinking. So if there's a concept that I'm trying to wrap my head around, I write an article about it and then I post that article here on Medium. It's how I think. And it's just so great that can help other people too. So really what you're doing is you're creating different content for different types of media. It's just how it's part of the process. All right. Question from the CEO. Golden says, what is your sense of the level of value that is required to succeed on various platforms these days? The level of value. So I have a rule. I love this rule. I call it the grandma rule. All right. So the grandma rule is basically this. It is if your grandma would like a piece of content that you're putting out on social media, it's probably not a good piece of content. And by that, I mean, if it is, if it's about like, oh, here's pictures of my kids, or, here's what I'm eating for lunch, right? Your grandma's going to care because she loves you and she wants to see what you're up to. Everyone else who's a stranger doesn't care. So creating value is fundamentally, how can you create value for some other person? And the bar is actually quite low. I work with, again, a lot of Duke students. And, I keep having to explain to them, like, just vlogging about your life, like, what is it like to be a Duke student? Hey, here's me going to class, right? There are millions of people in this world who, for them, that's an aspirational thing to be a student at a top tier university. And so they will watch that content because it creates value for them. So the truth is, the vast majority of you listening to this, watching this, like, you do valuable things in your day-to-day life already. And so the best advice I'll give here, and it's maybe it's how I'll wrap up, is I'll never forget. I was teaching a social marketing class at school, and I had this guy who was the CRO of Snap. He was in my class, and he brought his high school football buddy with him for some reason. And there was just like, it was like this meatheady football buddy who just like sat in the corner on his phone the whole time. And the guy from Snap was talking to him. Finally, at the end of the class, this random meathead football player kind of raises his hand and he goes, "Hey, can I just share one thought about social media?" And I'm like, "Yeah, sure, go ahead." And he goes, "The secret to social media success is don't create content, document your life." I'm like, "What are you talking about?" And then he just went back to his phone. And so I looked him up later, and it turns out he had about 500,000 followers on social media. This was like 6, 7 years ago, so it was a bigger deal. And I looked at his content, and it was just him weightlifting in the gym. That's his content was just him lifting heavy stuff in the gym. And I was like, oh my gosh, I get it, right? You're already doing things that are interesting to people. So don't go out of your way to create content. You all as entrepreneurs are doing amazing things every day. How can you document your entrepreneurial life? I guarantee there are millions of people in this world who want to see that. And I would highly suggest that you show them, and it becomes a huge opportunity. Anyway, thank you so much. I see I'm just about out of time. If you want, again, Entrepreneurial Office Hours is a good way to follow me. You can also check out aarondinin.com. Email me, ask me questions. Again, I work with lots of entrepreneurs on how to build their audiences, as well as public figures, things like that. So if you have questions, I love getting emails. I love working with people. So reach out, stay in touch. And thank you all so much for being here on your Saturday. This was really cool to see. Bye, everyone.